Ace is the place with the helpful hardware, folks.
This Thanksgiving, think outside the oven and get Thanks Grilling with Ace. Get a new grill and choose from top brands like Traeger, Weber, and Big Green Egg to add even more flavor to your Thanksgiving turkey, side dishes, and desserts. Plus, right now, get free assembly and delivery on all grills and accessories $3.99 and up. For the best help on the best grills, stop by your local Ace and get Thanks Grilling. Ace Rewards members only through December 24th. See participating stores for scheduling or exclusions.
This is No BS Job Search Advice Radio, episode 1843. I'm your host, Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and welcome. I like to spend some time regularly talking with different individuals, as you'll hear in a moment, and today's show's a good one, an interview about a career that most people don't pay attention to and really should. And I'm going to tell you, if you have to be a parent or a grandparent, this is a show I want you to listen to, not necessarily for you, but for the child in your life, the young adult in your life, the college student in your life. Hope you find this helpful and give it a great review wherever you listen to the show. And let's get going. As many of you know, I like to spend time with individuals who are experts in things that I may not be quite as expert at, because as much as I know, I don't know everything. And I've got an interesting guest today, Terry Iverson. The book is called Finding America's Greatest Champion. I'm just going to hold it up there for a second. And this is going to be a topic that I've been interested in for a while. I'm not going to go into the reasons for it, but pay attention to this one, especially if you've got kids or grandkids. I think this is one that will make a lot of sense for you. Terry, welcome to the show. Great to have you on board.
Hi, Jeff. It's great to be on your show. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Could you introduce yourself to everyone, give them a sense of what your background is like?
Okay. I grew up initially in Chicago and moved to Florida, where I spent most of my youth. And my family has a manufacturing background since the 1920s. And after bouncing around with different things I thought I wanted to do, one of which engineering school, I decided to join the family business in machine tool distribution.
And thus, once you join the family business, I have a hunch that there's more to that career history.
Oh, much more. I started in 1980, and it's been 40 years now. I'm on my 40th year. We sell machine tools, and we also rebuild machine tools. And I've been very fascinated and fortunate to call on some of the most exciting manufacturing installations in the country.
Now, we're recording this in June 2020. And we're at a time where 40 million people are out of work, and there's a whole crew of students that are coming into the workforce. And although the jobs report is issued today was better than expected, with plus 2.5 million rather than all the down numbers that we've been seeing for months, you're in a field, and I've worked in a field that isn't exactly seen as being one of those glamour fields. And that smile just says it all. So I'm wondering, with manufacturing being, and by the way, folks, the subtitle to the book is Building Prosperity Through Manufacturing, Mentoring, and the Awesome Responsibility of Parenting. I can't wait to pull all of this together. You know, what's the message that you're carrying to people? What's important for people, and why should they pay attention to manufacturing careers at this stage?
Well, manufacturing is in our country's DNA. Manufacturing has been a big part of our middle class and has fueled our middle class for decades, since going way back. But manufacturing is important, and what people don't understand is they have a misperception of what it actually is, what the reality is. It's very technologically savvy, it's very computerized, it's becoming more and more automated, and the best news is the paying careers are very well high-paying careers.
Now, when you say it's computerized, I know people are not doing software development when they're working in manufacturing. So that part of the glamour doesn't exist. But are they the guys in T-shirts and getting dirty all day, like I think that's the image that most people have of what it's like to work in manufacturing. And thus, when they look at their kids, they look, oh, no, 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 not for them.
Well, they're very exciting careers. And when I talk about computerization, there's programming on the machine and on the shop floor. And there's also programming in the CAD office and on computer. So it's the best of both worlds.
So they're using technology as part of the work. Like when you said it was the CAD office, the computer-aided design?
Correct.
Just making sure. So they're using the technology, and how are they using that technology? I'm curious.
Well, it used to be back in the day when I first started, there weren't as many computerized machines, which is a terminology called CNC.
Sure.
There was a lot of manual machines, and a lot of the skill was in the actual operator. And so, every machine had a different operator with a different skill level. And now with computerization, you can program the machine and you can let the machine do, the heavy lifting, so to speak, as far as the process. And it's made it a lot cleaner environment. It's made it a lot more professional, and it's exciting and challenging positions.
And thus, what does the person tend to do day to day as part of their work using these machines?
Well, there's so many different positions that and careers that are in manufacturing. Some are inspection related. Some are loading the machines, operating the machines. Some are programming and setting up the machines. Once again, some you're in the CAD office doing the print work and the CAM work as far as generating code for the machines. But there's a lot of different careers and a lot of different spots to fill. But there's a big void in the skills that we're talking about. Not because people make a conscious decision, it's because people just don't know they even exist, or that they can be paid well to be in those careers.
I'm going to say this in a flip kind of way. You said it's part of America's DNA. I think most people tend to think of it as being in China's DNA and not in America's DNA anymore. And I suspect there will be a move toward bringing back jobs to the U.S. Although, as I talk to some people, I also hear that there's a move toward moving some of those China jobs to other low-cost areas rather than the U.S., but that's a different conversation. There's always going to be a need for manufacturing jobs in the U.S. Some are not going to get outsourced at all.
Yeah, I think to your point, I think one thing that we've learned through this pandemic is that, there's certain things that you really can't rely on other economies to fulfill within our own country. We got kind of cut short on some of the protective PPE equipment during this, and some of the drugs that we need for this pandemic. Those things, we should have had better access within our own borders.
And it was interesting, and folks, if you're watching this 2 years from now, I know this is ancient history, but you'll get the point. It would seem as though a lot of nation states have regulations that basically allow them to interrupt the supply chain and say, mine first, mine. Now, I know you bought it, it's your equipment, but it's mine, you can't export it. And that seems to be what had happened with China during this time. So you mentioned a number of different types of jobs. And if we were looking at like, a hierarchy, because I think most people tend to think in terms of hierarchies for the levels of jobs, where there are relatively junior positions. Like I'll use technology, for example. There's a developer or an administrator, systems administrator. And then there's an intermediate and a senior, and then the person becomes a manager, a director, a VP. That there's that kind of a hierarchy of progression within the roles. I know they have no clue about in manufacturing. How does it work there? When people join a manufacturing firm of some sort, you can think, use your firm as an example or any other organization for that matter. What sort of hierarchy exists with some of those categories that you mentioned?
Well, in manufacturing, one of the things that's a current model is there's a lot of internships where people and companies will bring in many times young people for an internship, maybe during their education, and they'll do some of the lower responsibility tasks within the organization.
For example.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry.
That's
Well,
okay.
one of the things, like in a CAD office, you may be working on a CAD system and just doing some basic print modifications or drawing. Out on the shop floor, you may be, preparing bar stock or possibly, changing inserts on a particular job or setup. You might be, you might even be doing some, logistics or cleaning, or sometimes ordering material. That's a pretty easy task to get started. But the more skill level you have in manufacturing, like many other professions, the more valuable you become, and your pay is compensation is accordingly, adjusted up as your skill level goes as well.
That's cool. So when people break into the field in these rookie jobs, like in every other profession, they're not paid dramatically well. What kind of entry-level salaries exist, and what sort of salary progression exists within manufacturing?
Great question. It's very common for young people, they may come in just over minimum wage when they virtually know nothing. But what you'll find in manufacturing is your progression is way more accelerated as you gain skills than other professions. One of the things I talk about, and I researched quite a bit, Jeff, is that in manufacturing, the average wage with benefits is around $82,000. Now, when you say average wage, you got to remember you have beginners, and then you have 40-year, tenured people. So when you take that all into account, an average wage with benefits of $82,000 is very good pay.
Yes, it is, especially given the fact that these are people who have not had to spend however many $100,000 a year on a college education, and they haven't had all that student loan debt hanging over their heads all these years, that basically are going, their higher paying salary, so much of it is going off to pay off debt.
Yeah, I mean, good question. One of the things I point out in the book is I do a 12-year model on a 4-year, 5-year college degree graduate, and a 12-year model of a 2-year vocational type degree graduate. And I take the cost of the education and the thought of paying it back in the salary when you come out. And when at the end of 12 years, the college graduate, 4 or 5-year college graduate, because of the cost, they're at about, I believe, a negative 120,000 cash negative. And the other 2-year vocational degree individual paying back the education cost is 90,000 cash positive. There's a $250,000 difference almost.
Wow. Where are jobs located?
Well, there's manufacturing hubs all throughout the country. So, there's a lot of people drive by industrial parks every day, all day within their communities. They just don't know what's inside the 4 walls.
And thus, those buildings aren't just simply tech hubs or office places. Many of them may involve manufacturing positions as well.
They do. And the bulk of manufacturing in our country are small companies, small businesses. They may have between 5 and maybe 50 people. There is a lot of manufacturing in large organizations, the Boeings of the world, and other companies that are very large, Caterpillar. But that being said, there's a lot of job shops, and there's a lot of smaller companies that make products for the bigger companies. And so there's a lot more opportunities than just the big corporations.
And it's interesting, from my time in search, because I was a headhunter for many years, like 40, and I was part of a network of recruiting firms that were kind of subdivided into areas of expertise. So my background was primarily IT recruiting. And there was another group that I spent a little time with. I even spoke to the group on one occasion that was focused in on manufacturing. And the bulk of the recruiters in this network were IT oriented. But the ones that were making the money were the manufacturing.
Very true.
And it was interesting to me because I spent some time talking with the folks in that field, and they said, there's a lot of redundancy. There's just a lot of people who are in IT recruiting, and there are a lot of IT professionals, but no one's going into manufacturing. So there are clearly labor shortages. And thus, folks, if you're not happy in your job, if you're not being treated well, if you think you're underpaid, there's usually someone down the block or at a place in the country where you want to live that might be interested in hiring you, because there are labor shortages. I think in the book, what was the age that you said the average manufacturing worker is?
Oh, it's well into, Jeff, it's well into the 50s. I mean, that's one of the biggest misnomers about manufacturing, besides what people perceive it to be, is that we have people my age that are, near the end of their careers. They've been in it 40 plus years, and we want to pass on our tribal knowledge to the next generation. And so there's the baby boomer generation is now graduating towards retirement, and there's a gap, there's a skills gap, but there's an age gap where there's a whole generation or generation and a half or two that was skipped. And so you have the younger people that are really getting advanced, like almost fast track to management, because they're leapfrogging over an entire generation that isn't there.
Interesting. And I'm going to hit a subject here and deal with a stereotype. The stereotype tends to be that manufacturing is a bunch of old white guys.
Well, there's some truth to that, and
Right.
and so consequently, there's not enough women in our industry. There's a huge opportunity for them. To be honest, there's not enough people of color in our industry, and there's a huge opportunity for them as well. And so I challenge the manufacturing sector to be a little bit, proactive and think differently, and try, to appeal to a different audience than what we've tried in the past.
Fabulous. And what kind of training do people get when they move into the field? What's it like during that first, how long does the training last?
Oh, wow. The training is a lifelong lessons. I'm still learning and being trained in many facets. And this
Yeah, but you're on your way out. You don't count anymore.
I don't count anymore. I don't. You're right. But no, as far as training, there's all sorts of online training, which is I'm really excited to say. SME has what they call Tooling University.
What was the name of that again?
Tooling University is owned by Society of Manufacturing Engineering, and they've done they acquired Tooling University, and there's a lot of really cool classes on there. The other thing that I try to talk about, Jeff, is that there's a young man named John Saunders that has a YouTube channel called NYC CNC, and he taught himself how to be a manufacturer, and he puts out YouTube videos to help train people just like he learned.
Wow, that's fabulous. Could you state the name of that YouTube channel again?
It's NYC CNC is the YouTube channel, and there's a lot of information. He taught himself to be a manufacturer, and he's interviewed in the book. And then there's also Titan Gilroy and Titan CNC. He has a series of classes online that you can learn about manufacturing, and a lot of this, some of this is on a charge basis, and some of this is free.
Fabulous. Now, I know you started or helped start Champion Now. Could you tell people about Champion Now, what its mission is, and what it sets out to accomplish, please?
Well, I got so involved probably 25 years ago into technical education with high schools and community colleges. And, I had a lot of boards I sat on with, education foundations, both locally and nationally. And so after having said that, I just didn't feel that talking to one high school or community college student or a class at a time was adequate. So I was on my way to Washington, D.C. on a board that I sat on. And I wanted to change perceptions. I wanted to change manufacturing perceptions. Well, it's an acronym. Champion Now is change how American manufacturing is perceived in our nation. And so it's kind of a cool acronym. Manufacturing doesn't have a lot of real, high polished, icons or perceptions or images. So the name fits as well. And the now is the call to action. But the main focus and mission is to really change perceptions and let people know that manufacturing is a cool place to be, and that, they can make a lot of money. The one thing I haven't said that I should say is on the NAM website, the National Association of Manufacturers, the Manufacturing Institute says that there's around 600,000 manufacturing skilled positions that go unfilled every year. And then the next 10 years, there's probably 2.5 million positions that will go unfilled in our industry in this country.
Wow. Wow. And thus there's a huge opportunity that is ignored. Where do businesses, where do nonprofits find that next generation of people? Like, if someone's watching this video and decides, hey, I want to get into manufacturing, like, what do? Like, what's the next step for them?
Well, it depends on where they're coming from and what age bracket they're in, but there's a lot of different ways. I write about Project Lead the Way. I interviewed Vince Bertram, who's the president. Project Lead the Way is project-based learning that's going into the high schools all around the country. So you can go to their website and you can see what high schools are in your area that have Project Lead the Way. There's a lot of community colleges, and there's a lot of associations that have technical, CTE is the actual name, Careers in Technical Education. So you can go to the CTE site and find out, what community colleges have manufacturing classes. And there's a number of ways you can learn about it. But one of the big things that I have to point out is there's an organization called Manufacturing Day. And so if you're a parent, or if you're a student, or even somebody that's older and you want to learn more, every October, early October, manufacturers all over the country open up their doors and invite people in to see what today's manufacturing looks like. And it's been going on for about 6-7 years. It initially started with the FMA, which is the Fabricators and Manufacturers Association, but now NAM conducts it and administrates it.
What's fabricating?
Fabricating, there's metal cutting, and there's fabricating, and then there's additive manufacturing. Metal cutting is actually taking metal away from a piece of bar stock. Fabricating is bending a piece of sheet metal. And then additive manufacturing is 3D printing. So in a general scope definition of things, those are three of the major ways you can actually manufacture something.
Fabulous. So we've been in that answer you've been talking about for younger individuals. Let's say someone's in their 30s. They've been a welder, for example, and they realize this isn't for me. Maybe manufacturing is it. What do?
Well, my advice, first of all, welders do very well. They get paid very well. So if they decide that welding's not for them, it's not for the pay. It's probably because it's not challenging maybe, or it's too redundant for them. But with that skill set and that attention to detail and mechanical aptitude can be parlayed into other different manufacturing very easily. So, whether it be going and looking for a job board, or going to a community college, there's all sorts of ways that someone that's in welding that can dovetail back into manufacturing very easily, in my opinion.
Now, we've been talking about the career of manufacturing, but the subtitle of your book talks about mentoring and the awesome responsibility of parenting. Now, you give the most words to parenting, so I'm going to go there next. What is that responsibility in parenting that you're trying to get across?
Well, I'm glad. This is really important to me, Jeff, so I'm really glad you asked about that as well. I think parenting is the most precious responsibility on earth. And those of us that are parents, we have a tough job to do and an important job to do. But, life goes in a lot of different directions at full speed. And so you have two parents working and they're both trying to fit in their job and, parent at the same time. Sometimes you have single parents, whether it be a mom or a dad. And so they have challenges as well. But then you also have the guilt of raising a child and knowing that you're not spending the time you want to spend with them because you have to earn income to pay for the family. So too many times what I've seen, and I used to coach travel soccer, so I interacted with a lot of parents and a lot of young people for 2 or 3 decades. And so what I would see is parents would make decisions that instead of holding their child accountable, they would try to be their child's best friend. Jeff, I was raised old school and I parented old school, and I believe in that. And, children need to learn lessons and become better citizens and better adults as a result of those lessons. So rather than parenting out of guilt, do the difficult, task of making the decisions of how to, hold your child accountable, both good and bad, so that they learn and they become the best that they can be.
It's funny. My son is 19 as we're recording this, and he graduated high school. He said, "I'm not going to college now," and it was interesting to see what he had learned from me just by watching. And one of the things he learned was show up early for work a little late, put in your best effort. I noticed this just as he would talk about his job and some of the things that went on there. Like if he was supposed to be there at 8:30, he was there at 7:45, breakfast in hand, keying into the building to be able to get in. If he was supposed to leave at 6:30, he was generally leaving at 7. And it's sweet stuff that he picked up from me. I feel guilty about it. I've turned him into a workaholic at 19. But it's the right attitude. And I know so much of the culture that we have, even with phrases like, take it easy, that we habitually say is designed to curtail drive rather than encourage drive to success. So I understand that message about, I don't want to call it old school per se, because the old school also had the involved with it that I know you're not talking about.
No.
That's the first thing that came to my mind, of course, was the old school 1950s. Oh yeah, I'm going to take out the belt.
No, we're not talking about that.
Yeah, I know. And then the part is mentoring. That's the other part of your title.
It is.
Who's doing the mentoring? Who's receiving the mentoring?
Well, the example that I made with single parents, I was raised by my mom, single parent down in Florida, and I was very blessed. I was very blessed that I had coaches, I had teachers, I had family friends, that looked out for me and mentored me. And as I grew and got into the working world, I had coworkers and supervisors that mentored me. I went into a family business, so I was very fortunate that my dad and my 2 uncles also mentored me. So with the world and with the different challenges that young people have, and with the challenges parents have that I just alluded to, mentoring is a huge need to supplement, maybe what parents, can't fill in all the blanks. So I think those of us that, are, in our latter years, I think all of us acknowledge that we're very fortunate to have been mentored by some very special people.
I agree. And one of the things I've kind of keyed in on for myself is the notion of what an elder is supposed to be like in our culture. And I know culturally, older people are pushed out. We don't listen to them. They don't, we don't pay attention to them. They think old school. And there's a lot of wisdom, folks, that you're missing out on if you don't ask the questions of people who've been there ahead of you. It doesn't mean you always have to take their advice, but it's useful to listen to it because the places you're getting the advice from may not know any more than you do, but they say it in a convincing way.
Well, I think one other point, Jeff, I'd like to point out is that in the workforce, there's a concept called reverse mentoring. And that is, those of us that have been around that we have a lot of the knowledge, tribal knowledge that we want to pass on. And let's just say, for example, in manufacturing, but we don't know the technology always like we should. And here we have this next generation, they've forgotten more than we'll ever know about technology. So there's an opportunity for the elder to mentor the young person, but also a great opportunity for the young person to reverse mentor the elder. So it's a win-win for everybody.
And I know in a lot of instances with people that I coach, they talk with me about the institutional mentor that they have and how they spend a lot of time mentoring that person. It's really interesting to hear that part of it. But in terms of careers in manufacturing, this is a really sweet book, and really lays out a good case. How can people find out more about America's Greatest Champion, building prosperity through manufacturing mentoring, and the awesome responsibility of parenting? How can they find out more?
Well, the most information that's out there is on Champion Now, champion with an N at the end, and then N again, now.org. And I have a whole litany of information about the book, about different articles I've written, different interviews. It is also available on Amazon. It's also on Audible, on Audible Book, and it's also an ebook on those different platforms. So, and the ones on Champion Now, I have a hardcover that's only available through Champion Now.
Cool. And folks, I'll have a link to championnow.org, to the page on Amazon where it's sold. I am told that it is less expensive on championnow.org than on Amazon.
I tried. I have a link that on podcasts and your podcast especially, that they can save 30% on by going to a certain link. Yes.
And I'll have that link in the show notes, folks. That's today's show. I hope you found it helpful. And if you did, here are a few more ways to get information and advice from me. First of all, visit my website, which is thebiggamehunter.us. Go to the blog. There's a lot there to help you with your job search, hiring more effectively, managing and leading, and workplace-related issues. In addition, if you're interested in my coaching you, there's a button there that says schedule. Schedule time for a free discovery call or schedule yourself in for coaching. Obviously, I'm going to charge for that, but I can help you with interview preparation, leadership coaching, salary negotiation advice, making a good decision between different offers, anything related to improving yourself in the workplace, I can coach you about. If you have questions for me, you can schedule 15 minutes with me at thebiggamehunter.us/live, or a less expensive way is at thebiggamehunter.us/video answers, where you leave a message for me and I'll respond with a 3 to 5 minute video. Connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/thebiggamehunter. I can assure you your network will expand a lot by connecting with me. And finally, watch me on TV. Download the JobSearch TV app for Fire TV, Fire Stick, Apple TV, Roku, like 90 different manufacturers. I'll be back tomorrow with more, and in the meantime, I hope you have a terrific day. Be great!
Does anybody want breakfast? Guys, let's go. I'm leaving for McDonald's in 5 seconds.
Why didn't you start with that?
The Breakfast Stampede Meal. It's only at McDonald's, where there's a meal for every morning.
And nothing says morning like a classic sausage McMuffin with egg. Right now, get this all-time favorite for just $2 on the $1, $2, $3 menu. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer or combo meal. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Ace is the place with the helpful hardware, folks.
This Thanksgiving, think outside the oven and and get thanks grilling with Ace. Get a new grill and choose from top brands like Traeger, Weber, and Big Green Egg to add even more flavor to your Thanksgiving turkey, side dishes, and desserts. Plus, right now, get free assembly and delivery on all grills and accessories $3.99 and up. For the best help on the best grills, stop by your local Ace and get thanks grilling. Ace Rewards members only through December 24th. See participating stores for scheduling or exclusions.